Хотели бы выразить наши соболезнования и слова поддержки постоянному представителю Республики
We would
Беларусь
like to express our condolences and words of support to the permanent representative of the Republic of Belarus, Ambassador Valentin Borisovich Rybakov, and through him to the Belarusian people, and also to all those who were injured. We wish a speedy recovery. There were 44 people on the bus, including 28 students from the Youth Sports School number 2 of the Belarusian city of Rechitsa. As a result of the impact, a pregnant woman accompanying the group was killed. A woman, a native of Luhansk, mother of 2 children. Another 9 people, including 6 minors, were injured. According to the driver's testimony, several UAVs were circling above the bus before the attack. Colleagues, this is not about a strike on military targets with consequences for civilians, nor an accidental hit, but about deliberate actions by the operator, who had the ability to see the nature of the target. This is a clear act of terrorism against civilians. This is how the Investigative Committee of Russia has classified this act. A criminal case has also been initiated by the Investigative Committee of Belarus, for which a visit to the site of the attack was organized. The Kyiv authorities, using a well-rehearsed scheme, attempted to place the responsibility for this crime on our country, calling the incident a provocation or an informational operation, allegedly advantageous to Russia. However, these insinuations do not withstand any criticism and are easily refuted by irrefutable facts. Numerous pieces of evidence were found at the site of the attack, confirming the drone's affiliation with Ukraine. The lack of courage and principles in the UN Secretariat is disappointing. To call things by their proper names, to declare the Kyiv regime the obvious perpetrators of the tragedy in the Bryansk region and other heinous crimes. Instead, we once again hear from international officials the same toothless comments about the inadmissibility of attacks on peaceful civilians and civilian infrastructure. Behind these general words lies political cowardice and a reluctance to notice Zelensky's crimes even when the victims are children. At the same time, any unfounded accusations against our country are immediately picked up by the UN secretariats without the necessary verification. We demand from the Secretary-General, the UN Secretariat, and relevant UN structures an unequivocal condemnation of these bloody crimes. Their ignoring of targeted attacks by Kyiv, with numerous child casualties, is a clear confirmation of double standards, blatantly violating Article 100 of the UN Charter. Colleagues, this is not even megaphone diplomacy, but rather cheap blackmail with the aim of dragging a sovereign state, the Republic of Belarus, into a confrontation. Kyiv's rhetoric about protecting Europe from Russia is nothing but a smokescreen to prolong the conflict, conduct hostilities to the last Ukrainian, and involve NATO in a direct confrontation with Moscow. Does anyone still doubt Zelensky's true intention to artificially expand the geography of the conflict into the territory of Belarus, Poland, and the Baltic states? This is playing with fire. Their client has already almost broken off his leash. We also note that, unlike the meeting convened by Ukraine on May 28th, Antonio Guterres did not come to the UN Security Council to express how concerned he is about the prospects of conflict expansion. This is apparently all that can be said about his sincerity and concern for the current situation, as well as his impartiality. Mr. Chairman, during the period from June 15th to 21, 296 civilians suffered from shelling by the AFU. 47 people died, including 1 child. Injuries were sustained by 250 citizens, including 20 minors. Militants of the Kyiv regime fired almost 5,000 munitions at civilian targets on Russian territory. As a result of strikes on Moscow and the Moscow region, an 8-year-old girl was killed. Representatives of Western countries consistently speak about the need for a ceasefire, portraying themselves as paragons of peace. Within the UN walls, this is de rigueur. It is precisely such signals that most non-Western countries are waiting for. They are hardly going to advertise their efforts to supply the Kyiv regime with weapons, their defense industry, and preparations for war with Russia. Questions will arise as to why most humanitarian appeals around the world are underfunded. Resources for peacekeeping and development assistance are being cut, while drone technologies and Ukrainian drone operators are spreading all over the world. However, one should not take representatives of other countries for fools. The reality cannot be hidden. All these multi-billion-dollar injections into the fighting in Ukraine ultimately reveal the true face of Europe. It is acting not as a mediator, but as the main sponsor of the continuation of the war, attempting to speak to Russia in the language of ultimatums, threats, and political blackmail. I address the Western members of the Council, whose countries are manufacturing and supplying the Zelensky regime weapons and long-range arms with which he deliberately strikes at the civilian population. By stubbornly and irresponsibly continuing to supply Kyiv with weapons, you have long since become accomplices to his numerous crimes. You bear direct political and moral responsibility for them. Russia does not accept ultimatums, does not negotiate under pressure, and will not allow decisions to be imposed on it that contradict the fundamental interests of its national security. As long as the intention of Western countries to inflict a strategic defeat on us and hinder the development of our country remains unchanged, Russia will continue to oppose these attempts by military means. The attack on the bus with children has been classified as a terrorist act. The Investigative Committee of the Republic of Belarus is conducting an investigation, during which all circumstances and details of the incident will be thoroughly analyzed and examined. Ukraine immediately declared non-involvement in the attack on the bus. Today, we have evidence of a responsible state. The attack on the Belarusian bus was carried out by a Ukrainian-made unmanned aerial vehicle. This UAV belongs to the DART type, equipped with striking elements. It has a warhead with an explosive mass of about 1,200 grams in TNT equivalent. Such drones are a development by the Ukrainian group of engineers Steel Hornets and use FPV control technology. During the examination of the scene, objects with markings in the Ukrainian language were seized. This is an attempt to create a pretext to pit Belarus against Ukraine and involve our country in the war. The cost of these actions, unfortunately, is the lives and health of Belarusian citizens. I want to quote the words of the President of the Republic of Belarus, Alexander Lukashenko. I quote, "If someone provokes and tries to drag Belarus into the war, it will not end well for those trying to do it." End quotes. Belarus is not involved in the armed conflict. Any attempts at pressure or intimidation, ultimatums, or threats against Belarus and its leadership are unacceptable. At the same time, we strongly advise against further testing the patience of the Belarusian side, and in no way consider the lack of an immediate tough response a sign of weakness, indecision, or cowardice. The public, impulsive statement we recently heard from the leadership of Ukraine only indicates a desire for further escalation of the conflict. Belarus categorically opposes escalation and calls for diplomacy and negotiations as the only tools for resolving the conflict. Today, in this hall, some provocative statements regarding Belarus have already been made, and perhaps more will follow. We see no sense in responding to them once again, as the Republic of Belarus has repeatedly done so at all levels, providing its public comments in detail. We consider it absolutely inappropriate to raise these issues at today's meeting, which is intended for discussing a completely different problem. But today, accusations against Belarus of complicity in the conflict sound especially cynical, coming from states that spend billions of dollars on supplying weapons to Ukraine, training military personnel, and transferring intelligence data. These countries are not just accomplices, but direct participants in the war and are doing everything to ensure that this war continues.
Then like, share and subscribe to Mirror Now.